All right, the next exercise I have for you guys is probably going to take a long time. These are different modes of working with gestural line. So the next part of the exercises we'll be doing are more gesture drawings. And gesture basically is when you're working more loosely to capture detail. I think we're very used to looking at drawing professionally as like this slow, meticulous, perfect process where you get everything down just so. Um, and part of getting into that mode is learning the process, getting the muscle memory for capturing the image and then refining or fine tuning or smoothing it all out. And part of capturing that image is just getting the broad strokes of it. So kind of like almost like just drawing really quickly just to observe and get practice in seeing how your proportions turn out. I think a tendency that new drawers have is to get really overwhelmed really fast because they think that they need to work really slow and perfectly right out of the gate. I think the better thing to do is just practice a ton and to go really quickly in the beginning and just kind of notice what your strengths are and where your weaknesses are and what you could work on and why do you do things this way? Why are your heads so big? Why are your proportions off? What do you tend to rush through? What do you tend to take more time on? So part of capturing gestures with these like broad sweeping strokes, and we'll do a practice exercise with that, is instead of using what's known as like a blending technique, like this looks pretty photorealistic, right? It looks like a photo almost. And what she has done, or whoever the artist is, he, she, I don't know, they, them, they've carved out the features using different gradations, different darks and lights, and then they've blended it. So they've smoothed together. So you don't see something like a gestural line featured here. This is very smooth. This is all a blending technique. And we will get to that point. But these are gestural lines. Instead of blending technique, you can see visibly the sketch lines that an artist has used. You don't see that when you look at this, right? You wouldn't say like that you see the scumbling or the cross or the hatching, but that probably is how they got there to begin with, is practicing with these sorts of line works. So let me go over these since I started naming them without explaining them. So there's scumbling, hatching, cross-hatching, and stippling. Scumbling is like very loose, scribbly motion. Hatching is horizontal lines or vertical lines. In this case, I just used horizontal lines. And then cross-hatching is when you use a hybrid or a combination of the two. So there's vertical lines and horizontal lines crossing together. And then stippling is when you make tiny little dots. And the purpose of using these, as you can see, has been to replicate or demonstrate a value scale. So that means going from dark to light, right? You see all the dark is on this side, all the light is on this side. That's value. There's a highlight and a shadow. And in order to make a two-dimensional shape, like a circle or a triangle, into a three-dimensional shape, so it looks like it has form in the physical world, you need to give it a highlight and a shadow. That makes it look like it has form. So I'll just do a little practice for that over here with the circle and scumbling. How would I make this circle that is very much flat, very two-dimensional, look three-dimensional, like it has a, a global form? I would start You can do this however you like. Maybe you already know your style. I usually like to start with the middle shade, like the mid ground, because it's harder to work your way back from dark. And I'll just show you what I mean. So I will be working middle ground here. And I know because it's a circle, it's a sphere, I know that the light would, if it's coming from here, light hits it at the most right here. So this will remain my lightest portion of the sphere. And then this edge down here will be my darkest. So I just kind of fill in with the middle ground. But I won't fill in this area. This I know is going to be my lightest, my highlight, my whitest area of all. And this scumbling technique, people, I think, tend to go into a mode of like curly Q scribbling. And that's all well and good. But I think it's a little more interesting and better for you, like working with gesture in your still lifes later, to get out of the habit of curly cues. And by curly cue, I mean like curlies. I say that with so much ire because as someone with curly hair, I was growing up with people drawing my hair like this, and that's offensive. And then I thought it was more democratic to draw my hair like that. So that's typically how I make a scumbling gestural line, is I will loosen up the curly cue and make it a little bit more of a wavy cue. You're like a little hybrid, a little bit of both. And this will be very easy for you guys to get this kind of like nice value quality of light to dark when you're working with pencil. It's a little harder for me to do with a Sharpie because I'm trying to get like really faint lines right around the highlight, so I'm not like making the highlight too dark, but you get the picture. It's very dark down here, it's very light up there. You can go even darker, you really press harder, scribble. And this is just to get your hand and eye coordination down, and for you to get used to making lights and darks using these kind of gestural lines. And then I would do the same for the triangle. I won't go into it with all of these for each one because it would just take way too long. So I'll do a quick one down here. So the cone shape, I guess the light will come from the same direction. So I'll keep this side light, and then this side will be dark. And it's a cone, not a pyramid. So it kind of has like a little scoop down here at the bottom. And obviously, you don't want to have your shapes really darkly outlined like I did, but that's just so that you guys have a reference while I'm doing a tutorial. Yeah, so we'll make this side really dark. And then ideally I wouldn't have this outline here. This whole side could just basically vanish. Yeah. That's scumbling. And then hatching, I could do, we'll do these really broad strokes. So just making horizontal lines, making sure I'm following the same agenda. You know, the highlight comes in over here, darks would be down here. If you've ever seen the AT&T symbol, it's basically that. They're using hatching to make a logo. Okay. And then I would do the same for the cone. Cross hatching, it would look like this. So you have horizontal lines, and I reversed that in my mind. I said horizontal, but I was making vertical. Now I'm making horizontal, and I'm going to say vertical. You get the picture. It's a cross between vertical hatch lines and horizontal hatch lines. I like this one. I always refer to it as like mohair suits or just fabric, right? There's an obvious weaving going on. If any of you have ever tried weaving before. Basically, it's putting a horizontal line into a vertical line to create a opaque or non-transparent texture. I mean, purposefully, it's to create a mass, and then the result effect is that it's something that's highly textured. But it does kind of look like fabric. Great. So your values over here. And obviously you guys will take more time to kind of flesh out these values than I'm doing, because we've already gotten into like 12 minutes of tutorial. Okay, and then for stippling, it's dots. So I'm going to work with really big dots over here in the sphere, but as you can see in this square that I did, you get a lot more value if you're working with little tiny dots. And this can take kind of a long time, so it's pretty meditative to do. And big dots, tiny little dots. Oh, I said I was going to do big dots. Okay, big circles. See, even doing big circles is kind of taking me a long time. But I want you guys to really take your time. I would work with a range of pencils on this. So, you know, break out your H's to do the lights, break out your B's to do the darks. That way you're not working quite so hard with just one pencil. But if you are only working with one pencil, just press more lightly, press harder in different spots. But yeah, we're going to follow these guidelines. You're going to make these 12 different squares or different shapes and turn them into three-dimensional forms using these gestural line tactics.